When single mother Jessica Torres desperately grabbed a stranger's hand to avoid her abusive ex-husband at an upscale Dallas restaurant. She had no idea she'd just touched the most feared man in Texas. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to the stranger. "My ex just walked in and I can't face him right now." What she didn't know was that Marco Santini wasn't just any customer. He was a man whose name made powerful people tremble. The scent of truffle oil and desperation hung thick in the air at Meridian, the upscale Dallas restaurant where I'd been serving tables for 8 months. My feet ached in the required black heels, and the tight uniform dress made every movement feel restricted as I balanced 3 plates of overpriced steaks on my forearm. 8 months since I'd fled San Antonio with my 3-year-old daughter Sophia, running from a marriage that had nearly killed us both. 8 months of starting over in a city where I knew no one, working double shifts to afford our tiny apartment while Sophia stayed with Mrs. Chun, our elderly neighbor who'd become our guardian angel. "Table 14 needs more wine," James, the floor manager, hissed as he passed, his disapproving glare reminding me that I was still on probation despite my perfect attendance record. I nodded quickly, my heart hammering. 6 more hours until I could pick up Sophia and hold her close, breathing in her baby shampoo scent instead of this suffocating blend of wealth and judgment. The restaurant buzzed with Friday evening energy, business deals over bourbon, anniversary dinners, celebrations of milestones achieved on the backs of people like me. I kept my head down, invisible but attentive, every dollar in tips crucial for next month's rent.
Before we continue, please comment below where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe.
"Excuse me, miss." A woman dripping in diamonds raised one manicured finger. "This salmon is overcooked. I want a new one." I apologized profusely and took the barely touched plate, wondering if her complaint was real or just another power play. As I turned toward the kitchen, the front doors swung open, and my world tilted off its axis. Carlos, my ex-husband, standing there in his expensive suit like he owned the place, scanning the room with those cold eyes that had haunted my nightmares for months. He looked good, too good for someone who'd left bruises on my ribs and terror in my daughter's eyes. Panic clawed at my throat. How had he found me? I'd been so careful, changed my name back to Torres, moved across state lines, paid cash for everything. But there he was, speaking to the hostess with that charming smile that had fooled me once. I couldn't face him. Not here, not in this humiliating uniform while he stood there looking successful and untouchable. Not when he might ask about Sophia. Might try to take her back to the hell we'd escaped. Desperate, I scanned for an escape route. The kitchen was too far. I'd have to walk directly past him. My hands shaking, I moved toward the bar where a group of well-dressed men sat with their backs to the entrance. Without thinking, I slipped into the space beside the nearest figure and grabbed his hand like a lifeline. The hand I seized was warm, surprisingly gentle despite its obvious strength. Heavy gold rings adorned his fingers, and I felt him tense beside me as my desperate grip tightened. "I'm so sorry," I whispered urgently, not daring to look at him yet. "My ex-husband just walked in and I just can't deal with him right now. Please, just for a minute, pretend you know me." Finally, I turned to face the man whose privacy I'd invaded, and my breath caught. Dark eyes met mine, not brown but nearly black, intense and calculating. His face was all sharp angles. High cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with designer stubble, lips pressed into a thin line of surprise. He was older than me, maybe early 40s, with silver threading through his dark hair that only enhanced his commanding presence. For a terrifying moment, he said nothing, just studied me with those unsettling eyes. Then something shifted in his expression, a decision made. "Isabella," he said, his voice a low rumble with the faintest hint of an accent. "I was wondering where you'd disappeared to." Relief flooded through me. "Sorry to keep you waiting." I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. From the corner of my eye, I saw Carlos being led to a table across the restaurant. He hadn't noticed me yet, but in the open dining room, it was only a matter of time. The stranger, my unexpected savior, followed my gaze, his eyes narrowing as they landed on Carlos. Then, with fluid grace, he shifted his body to shield me from view while placing his hand on the small of my back. "Is that him?" he asked quietly, his breath warm against my ear. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Recent divorce?" 8 months, I whispered. "But he's been difficult." Something dangerous flashed in the stranger's eyes. There and gone so quickly I thought I'd imagined it. His hand pressed firmer against my back, protective and possessive all at once. "You need to leave," he said, ignoring my unfinished question. Your shift doesn't end for hours and I need this job. I need the money. The admission tasted bitter, but Marco's dark eyes traveled over my face, taking in details I didn't know were visible. The exhaustion, the worry, perhaps even the faint scar on my wrist from Carlos's last lesson about respect. What time do you finish? 11, I replied automatically, then immediately regretted sharing the information. He nodded once. I'll wait. That's not necessary. You've already. I'll wait, he repeated, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. You shouldn't be alone if he decides to linger. Before I could protest further, James appeared beside us, his face pale as he glanced between me and Marco. Torres, he said, his usual bite tempered by something like nervousness. Table 9 has been waiting for their check. I'm sorry, I was just. She was assisting me, Marco cut in smoothly, his voice dropping to a register that made James physically step back. I believe I requested her specifically. James's face went white. Mr. Santini, I didn't realize. Of course, sir. Take all the time you need, Jessica. He retreated quickly, and I stared after him in confusion. You know my boss? A slight smile touched Marco's lips. I know many people in this city. It wasn't really an answer, but something about the way he said it told me I wouldn't get a clearer one. I really should get back to work, I said reluctantly. Marco reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into my palm. Heavy cardstock with just a name and phone number embossed in dark ink. Marco Santini. If he approaches you, call immediately, he said, closing my fingers around the card. Anytime. For the rest of my shift, I moved through the restaurant in a daze, hyper-aware of two things: Carlos, who thankfully remained absorbed in his dinner with a blonde woman I didn't recognize, and Marco, whose commanding presence seemed to alter the very atmosphere of the room. Occasionally our eyes would meet across the space, and each time a strange current passed through me, gratitude mixed with curiosity and something else I couldn't name. But when I emerged from the employee locker room in my worn jeans and thin jacket, Marco was there, leaning against a sleek black Mercedes, checking his phone. You waited, I said, surprise coloring my voice. I said I would. His dark eyes met mine. Your ex left an hour ago, but I'd prefer to see you home safely. I can take the bus. Get in the car, Jessica. It wasn't quite a command, but the authority in his voice made it clear this wasn't up for debate. Against my better judgment, I slid into the passenger seat of the most expensive car I'd ever been in. Where to? Marco asked as he started the engine. I gave him my address, watching his face for any reaction to the neighborhood. One of Dallas's poorest, where rent was barely within my means even with 2 jobs. His expression remained impassive. We drove in comfortable silence through the city's glittering downtown, moving toward the less glamorous outskirts where I'd built our new life. Finally, I couldn't contain my curiosity anymore. Who are you really, Marco Santini? He glanced at me, something unreadable in his dark eyes. Just a man who doesn't like seeing people hurt. James acted like you were someone important. Importance is relative, he said diplomatically. We pulled up outside my apartment complex, a tired 4-story building with peeling paint and a broken security gate. Marco got out to open my door, and I noticed how his eyes swept the area, cataloging exits and potential threats with practiced efficiency. Thank you, I said as we stood beside his car. 3 days passed in a blur of work and worry. The money sat on my kitchen counter, untouched but tempting. It could pay next month's rent, buy Sophia new shoes, cover the medical bills I'd been ignoring. But accepting it felt like crossing a line I wasn't sure I could uncross. That I was loading groceries into my car outside the corner market when I heard his voice behind me. Hello, Jessica. Or should I say Isabella? My blood turned to ice. I turned slowly to find him leaning against a silver BMW. That familiar smirk playing at his lips. Carlos, what are you doing here? Without another word, I pulled out my phone and dialed Marco's number. He answered on the first ring. Jessica. He found us, I whispered. Carlos. He's threatening to take Sophia. He knows about you, about us. Where are you? Marco's voice had gone deadly quiet. The market on 5th Street. But Marco, he knows where we live. He mentioned Sophia and Mrs. Chun. Stay exactly where you are. Don't move. Don't engage with him. I'm coming. The line went dead. Carlos was watching me with amusement, clearly having overheard enough to understand who I'd called. This should be interesting, he said. I've always wanted to meet a real gangster. 15 minutes later, a convoy of black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. Marco emerged from the lead vehicle, flanked by men who moved with military precision. He looked different, harder, more dangerous than the man who'd helped me at the restaurant. What followed was brief and terrifying. Marco spoke quietly to Carlos for less than 2 minutes, but whatever he said drained all color from my ex-husband's face. Carlos stumbled backward, nearly tripping in his haste to reach his car. Within moments, he was gone, tires squealing as he fled. Marco walked over to where I stood frozen by my car. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "He won't bother you again," Marco said with absolute certainty. "But things have changed now. He's made this personal." "What does that mean?" Marco's dark eyes held mine. "It means you and Sophia need protection. Real protection. I can't afford. Money isn't the issue." He stepped closer. "The question is whether you trust me enough to let me help you properly." I thought of Sophia upstairs with Mrs. Chun, innocent and unaware of the danger circling us. I thought of Carlos's threats, his research into Marco's background, the implications for Sophia's safety. "What kind of help?" I whispered. "The kind that ensures men like your ex-husband never threaten you again." I looked into Marco's eyes and saw something that terrified and comforted me in equal measure. The promise of absolute protection, no matter the cost. "Yes," I said quietly. "I trust you." Marco nodded once, decision made. "Then we need to go. Now. Get Sophia and whatever you need. Everything else can be replaced." As we headed toward my apartment building, Marco's men spreading out to secure the area, I realized my life was about to change forever. I'd grabbed a stranger's hand in desperation, never imagining it would lead to this moment. Protected by a man whose name made my ex-husband flee in terror.